Welcome back to part two, the Q&A of our Moonshot for Superhot Rock. Picking up from where we left off, Igor, I'd like to start with you. Key innovations for first-of-a-kind demonstration.
Yeah, from our side, what we see clearly since the beginning is that geothermal, specifically deep geothermal, should present the breakthrough, something that makes the industry, the energy industry, to believe that it is something that we can scale and we can do in a big amounts in the future as a viable source of the renewable energy. On the other hand, this is not only about the breakthrough. In the last 2-3 years, we are more and more concerned or concentrated on this integration part, not as the opposite to the breakthrough, but as a absolutely needed, let's call it, hybrid approach, utilizing all the best things that you can take today, including the assets and including the infrastructure you can get today from the industry, and combining with the new approaches. So in our case, we totally focused last 10 years, we can say the initial part, more scientific part, when we have to prove that yes, it's viable to increase the rate of penetration, decrease the cost of the drilling in the order of magnitude, to change the paradigm in the future, because once you are talking about drilling in deep depths, like 8 kilometer, 10 kilometer plus, that's something that is very challenging, and this is not a typical depth that oil and gas industry is working today. So there is no interest of the today's drilling industry to work in these areas. While in our case, this was exactly the end game. We want to have the solution. So if I compare it now to the approach that I think is a good match between these two worlds, like today's incremental and future breakthrough, is some pathway when you can connect it in the way that, for example, in the drilling, we are using the thermal approach. You can imagine it's like a stressing the rock by the hot stream of whatever, and it is crumbling in the pieces without need of the touching the rock. That's a big advantage, because even at the high pressures and high temperatures specifically, you are able to deliver the enough power to destroy the rock and continuously in the faster way than it is with mechanical. On the other hand, mechanical drilling is something that is well established. It has all the infrastructure around, including the cuttings removal and all these details. And we see this hybrid approach between these two as an ideal way forward. So that's also our now strategy last couple of months, what we are trying now to adopt, to use, let's compare it to propellers in the aviation. Is like old style that was used for the transfer of the planes with the jet engine, and something between is turbo, like is a very hot, very aggressive environment. But on the other hand, it's not so much different to today's engines. And this is some midterm target what I see for the geothermal, combined with the new technology, specifically about the drilling, that yes, we can do something that we can integrate and deploy in the next couple of months and years to be able to help to today's projects, to extend the depth, extend the capacities of the brownfields. But on the other hand, to be able to show clearly that yes, this new technology is working. And now in the next step or in the next project, we will go even farther to be able to show it more as a breakthrough and deliver the results that are absolutely not viable today. It means significantly to cost cut everything, and being able then to plan and to deliver the de-risked projects that are then bankable. So yeah, that's what I see as a good connection in these 2 points.
Yeah, Daniel, I'm going to ask you next, and then Trenton, because I have a follow-up question relating to Newbury. So Daniel, if you could go first.
Sure. So on the for EGS type wells, you know, mechanical durability, and that involves proper analysis and planning for the stresses that will occur and the cyclic loadings that occur over the life cycle of a given well. When you inject, you cool it off. When you produce, you heat it up. There's a lot of thermal stress going on and impacting both the casing and the cement. So those things need to be looked at. I wouldn't say new research needs to be done, just closer attention needs to be paid to those critical issues. And there may be some research needs to be done. for closed loop, thermal enhancement through using directional drilling long horizontals to give you more wellbore exposure that improves your thermal efficiency. There are existing tools, but if we could use, if we get tools that would help us drill at temperature and at depth, that would be a plus. And then there are other techniques being developed to improve the thermal efficiency of those wells.
Trenton, your comment on key innovations needed for first of a kind.
I think fracture initiation, zonal isolation at these depths. It's not going to be like oil and gas fracking, but it's related but different. Being able to understand how that's going to work based on both lab testing and numerical modeling. I think characterizing our fractures downhole, where do they go? A lot of the tools like fiber optic aren't probably quite there for the temperatures, but I think fiber optics come as an incredible tool for doing DTS and DAS, but not maybe ready yet at these temperatures. So we do need fracture diagnostic tools and also just logging tools at these temperatures. We can cool wells, but probably not super hot wells quite down to where we can do image logging, for example, and other geophysical logs.
Yeah. So staying with you, Trenton, a question here about new projects. And if we focus on USA, Superhot Rock in Texas, is that an opportunity? And then Newberry, is that a on-off hit? And what is unique about Newberry today?
So I'll take Texas first. I think I know there's a lot of Texans and probably in the audience here who want to hear that it's doable, but I think that is we're going to have to wait for the advanced drilling to get down to supercritical there. So I think the low-hanging fruit for super hot is magmatic areas with wells, and there are currently 2 wells at Newberry that can be re-entered, and some zonal isolation and fracture initiation and stimulation could be tested right away next year. And then wells drilled in the future can learn from those stimulations and drill down to just say 4 kilometers and stimulate those wells or that well and drill a production well. So the goal, Ultrarock's goal right now is within the next couple of years to drill a couplet and create the first super hot producing couplet. And then those learnings can be taken to, magmatic systems kind of all over where you can hit that 5 to 7 kilometer depth and supercritical temperatures. And that we can do that. I think that's larger. The well descramble project showed that's quite feasible with the current drilling techniques.
In the documents that are attached to our Superhot Rock profile here online with Pivot, the costs of Superhot Rock, I think it was listed at $31 an LCOE, $31 per megawatt hour. That seems quite competitive.
Yeah, so I mean that was the whole point. The whole reason back in 2018 we started looking at Superhot is because we knew we had to compete with solar and wind, and that was kind of the only way we could really figure out how to do that with geothermal. And so one of the attachments is a paper I wrote in 2018. I calculated $46 a megawatt hour. It's pretty well. I'm sure that there's a lot of assumptions we can revisit there, but it's pretty well described. And then Matt Udenberg, another one of the attachments in 2020, kind of went through the whole process again and came down with even a lower cost, levelized cost. Obviously, the wells, there's an uncertainty about how much are these wells going to cost. What's the cost of casing? What sort of do we need titanium or other alloys? Because casing's probably nearly half of the well cost if it's titanium's required. But that's kind of $20 to $30 million wells in those cost estimates. But if you can generate 30 megawatts with a well, that's a far lower cost per well or infrastructure than closed loops or other ways of doing it. So that's why it's such an intriguing solution.
Okay, Thank you, Trenton. I've got a question that's come in here with respect to the challenges for Superhot Rock. What are the biggest challenges that we're facing? Is it drilling, cementing, completions, or drilling directionally? It's an open question. Who would like to comment?
Well, reservoir creation wasn't even listed there, so I think the reservoir creation is the hardest part. But I'll let probably everyone here is going to have a different answer to that.
So reservoir creation from Trenton. Who'd like to comment?
I sort of see them as one and the same, right? I mean, it's a matter of how do you get the right architecture of the well for the resource and do it in a cost-effective manner, right? Whether or not that's a vertical well drilled through granite or a directional well drilled through granite, right? So it's a situation where it's, you know, location and project dependent. So I wouldn't say that they're separate issues by any means.
Yeah. Maybe my short comment also is that is hand in hand because one thing is the project, how you can make a reservoir, and second is then how what are your tools in the hand that you can decrease the cost and decrease capexes, because then you have also the better way to plan.
Okay, I've got a number of themes that are falling out of the questions that I'm receiving. Environment is a big bucket. So in Superhot Rock, hot dry rock developments, induced seismicity, is that something we should be worried about? How should we mitigate induced seismicity when developing Superhot Rock projects?
I'll take that start. So I did write the first induced seismicity, or one of the first induced seismicity mitigation plans for EGS at Newberry back in 2012. I think that we're going to have to continue to do induced seismicity planning. What the good thing is, that process has been, I would say, streamlined. There's companies that actually will do that for you now. And I think we can't just assume from the get-go that because we're going to Superhot Rock that it's not an issue. So we'll continue to screen projects for induced seismicity, continue to monitor. But that helps the project anyway. You got to do seismic monitoring anyway. You should be doing public outreach anyway. I don't think induced seismicity is going to be greater or necessarily lesser than other kinds of projects, and we continue to do our best to characterize it.
And that's one of the advantages of the closed loop, obviously. But you know, again, there's trade-offs both ways as far as thermal efficiency. So
yeah. Sticking with open or closed loop, one of the questions I hear quite a lot and has reappeared here on the Q&A. What about the pollutions? So we're circulating hot fluids into rock at supercritical temperatures, ideally. What are the pollutants that we could be receiving? And is that something, how do we mitigate that?
So for closed loop, there's zero. And for EGS, I mean, Trenton, you can comment on those. They can be minimized, I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot of times that would be a closed loop at the surface as well, right? So
Right.
certainly in geothermal with binary systems, you have a heat exchanger and send the fluids right back into the ground. So I don't believe there are going to be any new contaminants brought up. You'll have to deal with probably scaling and geochemistry, you know, treating the fluids, but there's that's all well understood. And of course, Salton Sea, where we have a plant, is they're going to be mining lithium out of it. So there's, in some ways, picking up materials can be an advantage. I don't know if that'll happen here, but dealing with high total dissolved solids is something geothermal folks know how to do.
Yep. Great. I want to come to a question that's close to my heart, which is, how do we better map the thermal anomalies? What are we not doing and maybe should be doing? Trenton, is probably best directed at you.
Sure. Well, I think that's the great thing about EGS or AGS or Superhot is that there's it is a much easier problem than doing conventional geothermal, where we're trying to hit a fracture, 2 miles away. That's maybe an unknown orientation and size, and so that is difficult. But heat flow is pretty easy to measure. I would like it if temperature gradient holes were cheaper to drill. You could even do more of that, but really to do, if you're going to create your reservoir and all you're looking for is heat, that's a much easier problem. And also that's the reason to go adjacent and underneath existing fields as well. You really have a lot of data there. So I wouldn't go out into the green fields quite yet. But we do have good data already on heat flow all across the country.
There's a lot of thermal data from oil and gas wells all over the country as well that you could utilize.
Yeah, that's a good point. Talking about oil and gas industry, how do we get them interested in Superhot Rock, and why do you see reasons why they should not be interested?
Maybe I can start from technology perspective. I think here in deep geothermal, there is a big new area of the new technologies and R&D that could be explored. And what we see also from our side that some spin-offs, if we solve, I don't know, a deep hard rock drilling in a high temperature, including a lot of another systems that you have to adopt, is also another way how you can then backwards to innovate the technologies within the oil and gas. So I think it's a quite mutual benefit. So first of all, definitely geothermal should learn a lot from the oil and gas industry as it is today. But it's this, let's say, technology potential in advances for oil and gas. But specifically, what I think is a huge change, a huge opportunity today for the oil and gas industry specifically and drilling industry specifically to open the new strong business line for the future that will be appreciated by the public. So not talking about the fossil fuels, but basically doing the very similar job, but opening the huge amount of the projects in the next 5 to 10 years that they can diversify the portfolio and utilize what they learned 50, 100 years till now in the geothermal. So here, I think is a huge amount of or potential to work together in the next couple of years. And I'm convinced that it is only the drilling oil and gas industry that can make the scale from the geothermal, because there is no other industry that can directly help to the geothermal to be anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and I'll comment on that one as well, from the Baker Hughes side, right? So I think it's important to segment when we're talking oil and gas, the broader oil and gases. You have developers and operators versus the technology service companies like Baker, right? And so I could say that we are interested in Superhot Rock and have been interested for some time now. And Baker Hughes has been operating in the geothermal space for over 40 years, right? So it's nothing new to us, and we have technologies that we've developed specifically for geothermal project development. High temperature technologies that aren't used in oil and gas at all, but bespokely designed for geothermal. But agree with what Igor is saying is, it's a matter now of communicating and the divide between oil and gas and geothermal, demonstrating that geothermal is a fantastic use for diversifying the portfolios that these companies have, insulating from the cyclic cycles that you see within geothermal, and then using the knowledge of the employees and the technology and experience from oil and gas and geothermal to really turn it into something scalable, both with Superhot Rock and also with conventional geothermal, EGS, AGS, right, all the above.
Yeah, I just comment, there have been several companies that have shown interest in the past. Chevron used to be the largest geothermal producer in the world, and they continue to show interest, various companies, but I think we just need to reduce the risk associated with some of these technologies, and they're probably not going to take on the high risk until it's been better proven, and by probably venture capital and other people who are more interested in the high potential returns. So I think it's the field of dreams. Once you build it and prove it, I'm pretty sure they're going to show up. And like you said, they have a lot of the tools that can help do it. They're already primed to be able to do some projects like this.
Yeah. With the current cost of fuel and the analyzed costs of energy that Trenton talked about earlier, getting as low as $30 per megawatt hour. In the news, I've seen countries, paying as much as $150, $120 per megawatt hour if they are using a lot of gas to produce electricity. What would be a message that we could give to governments or investors around the world with respect to Superhot Rock?
When I think that larger number is just a kind of a good starting point to remind ourselves that to get to 30, we need to start probably at maybe 150 or 140, right? Because we can't do the learning unless someone's buying our electricity. So the 30 is a target after years of honing what we're doing. They did the same thing in oil and gas fracking, right? They had that high cost of oil back 10 years ago to help support their trial and errors. And so I think that is, we need those sort of higher costs to get started, and then we can bring costs down as we go.
You can also triangulate between areas where, the localized cost of electricity is already significantly higher, and where there's, potential for Superhot Rock, development. It may not be the west coast of the USA, but there are other places around the world which maybe have much higher prices. But again, where do you want to start? Probably somewhere where you have the highest potential for success first time out.
And talking specifically about Europe now, to be honest, that now is not about the price. Now it's about, first of all, the quality of the energy. It means that geothermal is something that is local, as is baseload. And that's what we are missing now totally in Europe as a viable alternative to the gas. And second thing is then the independent source. And if you are able to communicate clearly these two parameters that geothermal has, and it is standing apart, the geothermal, to the other sources like solar and wind that are intermittent, and we've seen many times in the year that they are not able to back up the fossil fuels. This is the winning point. So I think the last point to what is here is to show viable project that can demonstrate that yes, we can do that, and then the doors are much more open than for the investments and for the another pilot projects. And I think now we have the absolute historical momentum in these years to make the geothermal visible in this area, because there was no such situation like it is today.
Yeah, I agree with Igor. One of the philosophic elements behind the term moonshot is the notion that to succeed, you have to fail quickly and then embrace the learnings from that to enable success, right? And so the message to the governments around the world and different applications is that they can help us do that, right? Through R&D for the technologies and through funding for the demonstrations. So that way we're able to accelerate the pace at which we learn through failure and apply that for success and scalability.
Yeah, we have the Forge project, which is more conventional geothermal, a little bit of EGS, but it's much lower temperature. I think that's borne some really positive fruit. Some other projects like that in a super hot area would probably provide tremendous amount of benefit.
So we're down to 2 minutes, and thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. I think we've heard a lot today that points towards the fact that maybe Superhot Rock is not a moonshot, that actually it's a low-level flight, I think was the term used. Lots of technologies available to us today. In the session prior, we saw that a number of projects have already drilled into Superhot Rock conditions. I think this is achievable, and I think the learnings can be applied from successful demonstrations. As Trenton discussed, the costs can become quite competitive. With Igor's drilling, we can take this almost anywhere, initially at shallower levels, stepping out towards deeper levels. So really with that, I'd like to thank everybody very much for their contribution. And if the final comment I would ask is, what levels of funding do we require? Has anyone got a ballpark figure that you could throw out there for a successful demonstration?
For a single demonstration, probably something like 50 million.
I was thinking the same number.
Fantastic. So let's get those budgets open, whether it's through government funding or other sources. I think Superhot Rock offers tremendous potential. And from what I hear, we've got to do it. We've got to learn. Just sitting down talking about it isn't going to get us there. Thank you, gentlemen. Your comments were very much appreciated. To all those who submitted questions, I'm very sorry we didn't get to all of them. Just too many. I tried to summarize and combine as many as possible. And until next time, I think. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Philip.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice day.